Thank you, and Superintendent, welcome aboard. I don't know my background. I was a legislator for 20 years, and I represented in the Dayton area in the House and the Senate. And all during that time, I was on the Education Committee. I was on the Finance Committee and the Subcommittee on College, Universities, and Education. But in all that time, I never saw the General Assembly take on this task, looking at education from a Black perspective. We looked at it from all children, looked at it as efficient, but this is the first time I think in the history of the state, but specifically from my term in General Assembly, we've looked at it from this perspective. And President Shirley, you're absolutely correct. The NAACP, the action word is on advancement. That's why Brown versus the Board of Education is so critical to this conversation and to everything we do, because it is about the advancement of colored people, advancement in education, employment, all the areas we can think of. So that's why the work of this group is so critically important. That's why we're looking at finalizing the report. As I've often said, okay, it's supposed to be done. Okay, now it's going to be done before 4th of July. But now it's time for us to take it off the shelf and put it into action. So I'm looking forward to the advancement part of what this report. And Superintendent, I'd like you and I to sit down sometime and just get to know each other sometime soon. And I've asked Mrs. Jones to arrange that, and hopefully that can happen here soon.
Yeah, let's do it sooner than later.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, President.
Thank you. Again, I apologize for having to leave, but look forward to additional conversations.
So as you all will know, hopefully, you were participating in the May 12th meeting where we had Shelby and Chris who did a review of the report card reform. And we dived in pretty deeply and had lots of details and good discussion. Was not able to be had as much as we wanted because there was so much information to share. So today we are going to do a review of Ohio School Improvement System, and we want to let you know ahead of time we've got lots of good information here as well today, and hoping to have a little bit of time at the end to be able to ask questions and let Cindy or Johanna instruct you. Otherwise, we'll probably wait until the end. Because the very question you probably want to ask might be on the next slide or two. So jot your questions down and know that we are hoping that we'll have a little bit of time at the end. Additionally, I just teased you a little bit last meeting about our proposed plan to pilot the self-assessment tool, and we want to give you a bit more information. So as you listen today, we will be asking you at an upcoming meeting, where do you think this self-assessment tool can be implemented into some of our already existing processes? So think about that. Oh, this is a good area where we may be able to make sure that we utilize it so we can set a firm foundation. Next slide. Cindy and Johanna have been hearing about this information, I would say, well before Stephanie took the reins of interim superintendent. Neither one of them are new to school improvement. Johanna looked at the list from the task force that I know a lot of those folks. Cynthia returned home here, I think, about 3 years ago and did some work on this in North Carolina State Department. So these two are entrenched and really are the leaders within the department on district school improvement support and processes. So Johanna Ward is the director in the Office for Exceptional Children, and Cynthia Dooley is the director in the Office for Improvement and Innovation. Next slide, please. I'm going to turn it over to them, and I'm going to mute myself and know I'm here listening carefully, and I may have some questions as well, I think. Thank you, Cindy and Johanna.
Thanks, Marva. I'm just going to take us back one slide. I clicked that by mistake. First, I just want to say thank you all for allowing me to be here with you today. I'm excited to share with you sort of the ongoing piece. You've heard from Shelby Robertson last month around the report card system. Once we have the report card system, the accountability system in place, then what happens in the Office for Improvement and Innovation is we do identification based on the report card outcomes. And so I just want to talk to you about what that identification looks like at the federal and state level, what's required, and then how we support districts that find themselves in the lower 5% and identified for targeted support. So really there are, I'm just going to dive in, and please write your questions down. I'm happy to answer them. There are 3 levels of identification. Comprehensive support is the main level of identification. That's what we've called priority schools in the past. And then we have targeted. So it's full comprehensive and support and improvement, and then targeted. And then targeted really breaks up into 2 different types of identification. One is just like we need some additional targeted support. So comprehensive, this is what it means to be identified for comprehensive support. It's a federal ESSA identification. We in Ohio, following those federal guidelines, identify the lowest performing 5% of all Title I schools and all high schools that are failing to graduate at least 1/3 or more of their students. And then the third part is if they've been identified for this additional targeted support for several years and haven't shown improvement, then they receive comprehensive. So that's the first level of identification. Here are the other 2 that I talked about, targeted support and additional targeted support. And this, I think you might be really interested in, because this is really where, and Superintendent Dackman was talking about this as well. This is where we are looking at subgroup performance. So targeted support, schools are identified anytime there is 1 or more consistently underperforming subgroup of students. So when Superintendent Dackman was talking about the gap, this is how we know this and how schools are identified. And then additional targeted support just means we need an additional layer of support, because not only is the subgroup not performing, the subgroup is performing as poorly as the lowest performing 5% of schools that were already identified. So those are really the 3 levels of federal identification that comes out of our accountability system that you heard about last month, Shelby.
And thank you, Dr. Jones, and probably the 2 presenters can answer this, because for NAACP, the elephant that's still in the room that I think I need to understand if it is still there or not, and that is when we started this task force way back when, the question, the expectation, and remember the expectation that for the change in 2018, where majority students expectations were 86 point something. African American students' expectation was 63 point something. Is that expectation still in the conversation at the Department of Education, and specifically the Office of Accountability? You know what I'm talking about? Okay. And maybe you can help me, because that is, for us, every meeting we have, that comes up. And so I want to understand where that stands after all these months of deliberation and hearings.
Chris, are you on the call still? Here earlier.
Yeah, I am. So I think, what the question is relating to the ESSA goals on gap closing. There are sort of 2 pieces to this. The accountability system, the goal is for all students to reach proficient, and that was a big part of the conversation in the last meeting on the report card. Separately, the gap closing component, the goals are targeted to significantly reducing gaps over, cutting gaps in half over 10 years. And so, again, I think we talked a little bit about this last time, but there are sort of 2 related pieces to that. There's the getting all, a goal of having all students proficient, and then the gap closing goals, which are focused on subgroups with the goals of cutting gaps in half in 10 years, with the eventual goal of eliminating all gaps.
Did I interpret that? the interpretation is that we still have the two standards, 86 points and 68 points. That is still the two expectations.
Again, there are two different things here, though, right? So there's an expectation, a proficiency expectation for all students to reach proficiency. The gap closing itself is specific to a baseline for different subgroups. And so for each subgroup, it's based on the baseline of data with the goal of cutting it in half. So different subgroups will have different baselines. But it's all in the name of getting all students to proficient.
But Chris, if proficient is C, not D, why are we saying African American students can be an F? If proficient is C, why are the standards still lower? Expectations.
Yeah, I mean, I think, we can share some additional information on this, but again, going back to the report card presentation, last week, there are multiple measures on the report card, and the achievement measures, which are looking at proficiency in all levels of performance, are for all students with the expectation for all students. The gap closing is specific to, making substantial progress in closing gaps to meet that goal of proficiency. Again, different subgroups that, subgroups have different starting spots based on data, where those baseline.
Because it's given over a 10-year period.
That is correct.
Yeah, and I guess I'm gonna move on to see some other hands. That is still bothering and troublesome, and we're still gonna have an issue with that. Even though I kind of sort of hear what you're saying, but it's double speak, because if I hear you saying proficient is C, yet I put in place standards that say I can hit below C, and yet I can meet my essence obligation. That is trouble. But I'll move on to let others engage. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Thanks, Chris. There's another question. Looks like it is Mr. McGuire.
Yes. I was actually going to hold my questions to next month. However, I just want to remind us, since 1954, we've had 13 5-year plans and 6 10-year plans. And as of the last 4 report card from the state over the 3-year period, African American students went from 35 to 37 to 39. And President Roberts is correct. We had a meeting yesterday with Dr. Jones, Mr. Willard, in relationship to data. And I think President Robert, going back, we have to have a detailed discussion on data, the way it's calculated, why it's calculated that way. Because if you look at when African Americans got into this position, it was in 1825. That's when public education based on property taxes was started in the state. So this has been going on since 1831, when they got a chance to go to the first free school, and that was started by a Quaker family, and then in Harvard. It's out in Harvestville. So I just wanted to put that on the table. I know we're going out of time, so I don't want to get into it, but I think everything that we look at, if we get the data-driven stuff clear and relevant to time, because none of the districts that have fallen in the DF category, if you look at the way performance index was calculated up to 2019, performance index for A was 10 points. For B was spread at 2 points. For C, it was a spread of 10 points. And for D, it was a spread of 19 points, which means that you can go in the right direction, be making progress for 19 straight years, and you have to identify districts going in that direction. So I think without the set here, at the end of the day, that group needs to be root cause and what they are. I just want to
And Mr. Nicholson, I heard most of what you said. There's a little bit of feedback, but one of the things I really appreciate you and Ms. Lillian more being on the call with Dr. Willard and I yesterday. This started the discussion. You followed up today in writing. I appreciate that. And we were able, I responded in case you didn't see that, that we know we need to continue this discussion and maybe give you a document in hand so that it can be added to or that you can use it in a variety of places. I wanted to bring your attention to just a statement in the chat that Tiffany shared about Dr. Goggins. That's why you come on. Glad you're here today. And he placed a link for a dear friend of mine, Dr. Candy Womack, who works with him in Kansas City Schools, the area superintendent now for Columbus, just looking at creating successful urban schools. And so, you know, we do have resources that are available for districts right here in Ohio, and that's something, you know, great. And I was talking to a board member right then and said, you know, if we know something that works, nothing wrong with feeling it. We're real good at that. So know that we are committed to this. I'm so thankful for Superintendent Bracken getting on at the start to say, I wrote it down that this work is important to him, and we're going to make sure we get our next meeting on his calendar so that hopefully he won't have a conflict and can be here along with President McGuire. So, Chief Advisor Siddens, I'm going to turn it over to you to wrap up. Thank you all for your attendance here today. Great questions and continue the conversation.
Yes, I'll just add my appreciation for the great discussion today. Cindy Dewey and Johanna Ward do some really excellent work with the department and the regional state support teams, and so I am really glad they're a partner with us in this work. So as Marvin indicated, our plan is to arrange a follow-up meeting. We'll also convene a process oversight group as well to have a meeting on some of our next steps. And we especially want to talk about the pilot and nail down our timelines and activities. So I really appreciate your time today. I also want to give President McGuire a chance to address the group in closing as well.
I think
We've gone on mute, President McGuire.
am I unmuted?
You did it again. Yes, sir.
Am I unmuted now? I think everybody on this call, we talked about closing the gap. Well, with the transition between the former superintendent and the current superintendent, I think Interim Superintendent Siddens and Marva Jones have done an excellent job to close the gap. So let's give them a round of applause. We thank you for your leadership, and we look forward to the outcome. And Mr. Roberts and Mr. McWilson and my mother, Miss William Moore, I believe we're going to come up with a model for the nation. I keep saying that. But it's going to take due diligence and take the best out of Ohio and tinker with it a little bit. And I think we can replicate it not only in Ohio, but across the nation. Thank you all.